Welcome back to today's video. Today is Monday, November 4th, 2024, and today we're going to be taking a look at the 2024 election forecast. First of all, happy election eve, and before this video gets started, I wanted to give a shout out to a new website that we're launching, ltelections.com, ran by the Discord team. Super exciting stuff. A really great website for election graphics. I recommend that you bookmark it. You can take a look at all the results as they come in. They're going to be taking a look at how the odds are changing. Quite frankly, overnight, throughout the evening, they have every single election result you can possibly think of, from state propositions to, of course, the presidential race, to congressional races, to Senate races, whatever it might be. Everything across the board you can find all across the nation on this website. So ltelections.com, some really phenomenal graphics here. You can take a look just how they're tracking everything, what they expect from every state. It really is a fascinating, really fascinating site that's going to be super helpful on election night that we'll be using on our end too internally. And also shout out to the Discord server. I'm sorry to do all this promo right in the beginning of the video, but I think it needs to be done. Discord.gg/LTE. Highly recommend that you join the community here. Really exciting stuff. Overall though, definitely check these two things out. Back to the video, though. Today, we're looking at the forecasts. The forecast of the 2024 election just one day before. Now, most forecasting models are going to stop updating tomorrow. We got a brand new Marist College poll this morning, the national poll, showing Kamala Harris with a 4-point lead. So this is an A-plus poll showing Kamala Harris with about 3 points better than what the national average is saying, according to FiveThirtyEight and Real Clear Politics and Nate Silver. So pretty good results there for Kamala Harris. What we know, though, is for the past 7 days, the momentum has been building for Kamala Harris, and this is something you will see as we go through these models. The numbers have started to get better for the vice president. She, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, was on track to lose the election. A week ago, it started to rebound. Now we're starting to see clear consistency in terms of that rebound, and all around it's good results for Kamala Harris, to say the least. Now, it isn't enough to say that this election is said and done for. That's something you will quickly learn as we go through these models and really just dive deep into what makes them tick, and also just dive deep into what they are saying about this cycle. The Economist, FiveThirtyEight, all of them have come to a very big conclusion. This election is too close to call. Now, Vice President Harris has a 50% chance of winning, according to The Economist, and so does Donald Trump. On FiveThirtyEight, it's 53 for Trump and 47 for Harris. On JHK Forecast, it's 50 for Trump and 49 for Harris. On Polymarket, it's 56 for Trump and 44 for Harris. And on Nate Silver, it's 50 for Trump and 49 for Harris. So, despite it being close and competitive, the former president does have the advantage, at least when it comes down to what the forecasts are saying. But let's take a look at where they have agreement, where they have disagreement, and just generally understand a bit about it. I'm not going to use this and say my prediction by the end of the video. I don't think that's really the place of this. This is really just to understand what the models say. Keep in mind, back in 2020, the models were quite accurate. They said Biden would win many battleground states, and so he did. In 2022, though, many of them were wrong. They overestimated Republican support, said Republicans would win Pennsylvania, that they would win Arizona and Georgia, and they did not win any of those states. Regardless of what you're looking at, the maps here sometimes make sense and sometimes they don't. The forecasts can be right, and sometimes they can be wrong. But one thing is clear. They're saying this race is close for a reason, because it might be the closest presidential election of my lifetime and of the 21st century, and that'd be shocking, rivaling the 2000 presidential election, except Democrats might be happier with this result. But diving into The Economist, they've actually been tracking these numbers over the past 5 days and 7 days and yesterday. Kamala Harris has risen in support from yesterday and 5% from 7 days ago. That's good for Kamala Harris. But tracking these numbers over time, Kamala Harris very clearly had a better advantage at different points. Now, Donald Trump on the day of the dropout had a 75% chance of winning against Joe Biden. Fast forward to today, it's a lot better for Democrats, but it is still pretty close. It's a close race for a reason. The numbers in battleground states are saying that it is coming down to really every single swing state. All of them could be the tipping point here, but ultimately, Kamala Harris seems to be pulling ahead very narrowly in some of these states. The overall chance of victory, though, is roughly even. In Michigan and Wisconsin, Kamala Harris holds the advantage. So that's 15 votes in Michigan, that's 10 in Wisconsin. It actually isn't enough to win the presidential election. Donald Trump, on the other hand, has Pennsylvania, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, and Arizona. Arizona being the high end for Trump, Pennsylvania being the closest. This is actually something that I think is pretty consistent across the map here. North Carolina being better for Trump than Georgia is a bit news to me, but also not that shocking, to say the least. Because of the historical context, just in this present context, is a little bit surprising, but still not shocking. But looking at the states here, Michigan, Wisconsin, Kamala Harris, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, Donald Trump states. Narrow, close, competitive, sure. But Donald Trump still holds that upper hand, which means essentially they're predicting here that hold the election today, Kamala Harris would narrowly win. But based on their state-by-state forecast here, it actually breaks away a little bit and saying that Donald Trump, individual states on their own, probably has a higher chance of winning some of these states. Combined, though, the chances decrease enough that it makes Kamala Harris the projected winner. Regardless, though, it's 50-50. It's close, competitive. Now, JHK forecast, I don't actually cover that often. I've talked about it in 2020 far more than I did in 2024, but I do think that they show us some pretty cool results. 50 for Trump, 49 for Harris. It's actually a very similar story. North Carolina, Trump has a 63% chance of winning. In Georgia, 63. Arizona, 68. Nevada's 54 to 46. Pennsylvania's 52 to 48. But Michigan, Wisconsin, states that Kamala Harris holds the advantage in. She's expected to win there. She's expected to win in Michigan. Really quite interesting. And now it's changed over time, has really been over the past 3 weeks. Donald Trump held that advantage. He clearly was the favorite to win. Got a little bit narrower, but then he went back to being the favorite to win. And then for this past week, it was where Kamala Harris has taken the advantage. Then today, Donald Trump has taken it back. So really, really close stuff. Kamala Harris did hold a pretty substantive advantage for a very long period of time. Again, that's when Donald Trump really was able to ramp it back up, get back into a point where he was back in the competitive stage, but still a race that Kamala Harris has gotten to a point where when it was Harris and Trump on the day Biden dropped out, Trump had a 71% chance of victory. A lot better for Democrats today than it was under Biden, but a lot better doesn't necessarily mean a victory. And so when it comes down to those battleground states, you're looking. Pennsylvania's red, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada are red, Wisconsin and Michigan are blue. Now, 538 is honestly very, very similar too. It is really fascinating to see how much these predictive models come together and have the same result. Now, in 2020, it's a similar thing. A lot of the times they're trained on the same variables. They look at each other to see how they can do their models better and how they want to change it relative to each other. And so a lot of the times you're going to find results that are quite similar. Donald Trump today holds the upper hand, expected to win the Electoral College, unlike the economists forecast. And that's probably because his chances of victory are slightly higher than what the economists are predicting in some of these states. So you can see it here. In terms of states that Trump wins, you guessed it, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. Michigan, though, Harris. Wisconsin, though, Harris. And it is the same combination that swears up and down the aisle that Wisconsin and Michigan will go blue, but Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada will go red. Now, not really much news out of that, but let's jump over to poly market. Very similar story. Pennsylvania's red, North Carolina's red, Georgia's red, Arizona's red, and Nevada's red. But Wisconsin and Michigan, blue. Poly market is an interesting site because it has been very much been taken over by members of the right wing. They've been promoting it all across their platforms, saying that poly market is the prediction for the election. You see a lot of low information surrogates going out there, and that's putting it nicely, that are using this as their forecasting model, saying that this is the true gold standard, that betting markets are the end all be all. They have never been the end all be all, but 56 to 44. Something good for Donald Trump regardless, but it comes down to those same states. Wisconsin and Michigan, blue, and the rest of the states are red. A lot of it does really track what we see on some of these forecasts, but some of the margins that we saw a week ago when Trump had a 70% chance of victory, I don't think really tracks that large. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the state-by-state breakdown on Nate Silver's Silver Bulletin. I don't pay for the Nate Silver forecast, so this is what he tweeted out this morning, but it has gotten a lot closer, and this is actually one of the main models that has seen exactly what I was talking about before, where Harris had that advantage, right? Where we were talking about how she was building back up, she held that advantage, and then Trump took it back for about 2 weeks out of the past 3. And then it has been this past week that has really helped Kamala Harris's candidacy. And right before the election, it's 50 to 49. And so these states are just as competitive as they were before, but really the forecasting models are picking up just how close this race is, and similar to what we're seeing based on some of the things I've also seen on Twitter. Unfortunately, I don't have the screenshots up for you. It seems like her odds at winning in Pennsylvania is that tipping point state here, and that Michigan and Wisconsin right now are in the Harris camp, and the rest of the states are in the Trump camp. And so as we go into this final day, where both campaigns are going to be mobilizing their volunteers, getting everyone out to vote, getting everyone out to the ballot box, it is going to be a really big stretch. I don't know if turnout will surpass that of 2020. I'm not confident that it will. I do think it's a battleground state, so like Georgia, it will. And I think that's because when you funnel, $250 million into a state, encouraging everybody to vote, even more money than 2020, chances are people are going to vote. When you're not investing into any of these other states, chances are they're not going to vote. And because this election has also become hyper-focused on just a handful of battleground states, you're looking really at just 7, maybe 8, if you want to throw in some other surprise ones, but really 7 battleground states. The remainder of the states aren't getting any media time, any coverage, any attention. It really boils down to this election being decided in the closest states, and that's where you're seeing most of the turnout in this election thus far is in those 7 states. And so as we track these forecasts, I don't expect much to change tomorrow. I think that they're going to be just as close as they were. I think all 5 of them thus far, or maybe 4 of them, because poly market isn't being, evaluating any other factors besides people's money. I think we are at a point where this election cycle is so competitive that no one really wants to take a stance. I mean, if it was up to me, I wouldn't make a prediction because I don't know exactly how every state's going to go. I felt a lot more certain about my election predictions in 18 and 20, even in 2022 when I got some states wrong. This time feels very different. I mean, it feels like this is so far from being able to be understood. And I think there's a lot of competing factors here. It could be an overestimation of Harris support and Trump could win every battleground. It could be an overestimation of Trump support and Harris could win every battleground. We are rarely in a position where, both candidates could have a decisive electoral college victory and an equal chance of the narrowest electoral college victory. In 16, it seems like Hillary Clinton would win decisively. No one even talked about Trump winning as much as he did by, even if he was to win the election. In 20, it was the exact opposite. Biden was going to win by a lot, and no one even discussed that Trump could even win by a lot because it was just so far out of the realm of possibility. And every Republican prediction, even back in 2020, if they were saying Trump was winning, it was less than he was in the previous cycle. Now it's different. Everyone on both sides are so thoroughly convinced that their respective candidate is going to win, and they've been making this, argument and this pitch to the American public that this is their race and that it's only them who's going to win this cycle. Now, I don't think that's the best case. I think what we've come to realize is that this election cycle is just really going to be one for the history books for a variety of different reasons. We could have a resurgence of a former president who comes back and runs for office, Grover Cleveland type, stuff like that. That could be where we're at. We could also just be in a position where this cycle is throwing us for a loop because the results here are underestimating one side of the aisle so significantly that that's what makes this election go in the history books, which is also quite possible. So, TLDR here, the forecasts, I think, are trying to get as close to 50-50 as possible because no one can actually predict this election. I do think the way that they choose weights on different polls is something that I can agree or disagree with. I'm not here to critique the models as we're just analyzing them and trying to understand what they're saying in the final stretch, but I will have to admit, when you're looking from forecast to forecast to forecast, there should be some differences. And the fact that they all say the same thing feels very similar to the fact that all the polls point in the same direction, that this election is a true and total toss-up, which I believe it to be. But the statistical odds that poll after poll after poll after poll would find the same results, 48, 48, 48, 48, 48, 48, 48, 48, actually becomes less probable and less likely for me personally than you others might think. And that's just something that I have come to think about, come to understand to be an important part of the cycle, an important part of the election. But overall, this hurting of the forecast, hurting of the polls is quite unfortunate in totality. I think it's also better that hopefully we'll get some very reputable sources to do final prediction forecasts, different than what we might see. I imagine there will be many sites that will refuse to take stances on certain states to save their reputation, but it's all about putting it out there. And, choosing who you think is going to win the battleground states. But as of right now, I don't imagine that many of the sites will. But hopefully, we'll get some results out tonight from many of these major forecasts. Today, I believe John Ralston's supposed to release his Nevada prediction. I'm really excited to see that. And so hopefully, we'll get some pretty substantive answers here than just the race is a total toss-up, and there's nothing more we can say beyond that. Because as of right now, I'm going to release my prediction tomorrow, and I will have a conclusive answer for you. I will tell you who I think is going to be the next president of the United States. But honestly speaking, there's not much we can take from these forecasts except it's too close to call, which is something I could have told you 3 months ago when Kamala Harris entered into the presidential race. So, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the top left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 presidential election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.